Hugo. You know that Hugo is not only a co-working space, our core is organizing events. And today, Helen is going to speak about self-awareness as the key to empowerment and many other things. And a little bit about other events this week. We have a startup week in Bali. It's starting tomorrow. It's going to take like 3 days. Unfortunately, all the tickets are sold, but we can tell you the results on Saturday. Yeah, so welcome, Helen.
Thank you. Hi everybody. I'm really happy to be here. So for those who don't know me, my name is Ellen Schmidt. I'm a quite long-term-ish resident in Bali, in Ubud. And I like to share knowledge through talks about the work I do and to really raise awareness on the importance of self-awareness. Because I think that we all came here in Bali and living this lifestyle for specific reasons, but I often cross on my path people who don't make the best out of the potential and the possibilities of what this lifestyle offers us. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. But first I'm curious, what in this talk, what made you come here today? Does somebody wants to share like a word or a sentence that made you actually come in this room today? What about?
Curiosity?
Yeah, curiosity.
I think that's the most important thing out there. If you're not aware who you are, why you're here, what you're doing, what motivates you, what you hate, you can't really choose a path. And you can't choose a path, you waste 5, 6, 10, 20 years until you get there.
Exactly. Thank you. Somebody else wants to share? Or not? Okay. So yeah, as Pavlivas mentioned, we are all the products or the children of a specific culture that unconsciously or consciously has really programmed us to not ask ourselves any questions, to kind of follow a specific path, follow certain patterns of working, hours of command and control organization. A lot of us might have been at some point in corporate. And we've been educated by our parents or at school and then managed in companies in a way that you leave little room to self-questioning, and you kind of follow a job description or a specific restrained path for studies, and you kind of consider yourself that you have to stay in this, which is a pity. So the whole point is when you connect to self-awareness, it's a path of reconnection to yourself. And it's about taking time to first question, ask yourself a certain amount of questions, understand the answers, and start to own it, adjust accordingly. So you can slowly improve, implement some shifts in your life, and little by reconnecting to yourself, you are really going to thrive. So this is really the bottom line of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go much more in detail in this talk. So just for your information, it's the first time I give this talk to this format. So everything I'm going to tell you is something I completely can share full on. I just don't know if it's going to last 40 minutes or more than an hour. So I will do my best to freestyle and manage the time accordingly. So first I'm going to tell you about thriving individually, and first, why thriving individually? The thing is that we all have a busy life. Of course, we came here to kind of press pause or try to live things differently, but we have so many things going on in our mind that makes us kind of narrow-minded or seeing things only in a short-term way of seeing them, because we are that person. I mean, it's a guy with a tie, but that's very easy to be busy all the time and to run against time, to fight it. So you feel super stressed out, busy, all over the place, drained, or on the other side of the spectrum, you can procrastinate. That's something I really like to talk about, by the way, procrastination. And truth is, we've all been that person, or maybe some of us are still that person. the raw truth is that it's our personal responsibility to stay in that space or to start taking actions so we can shift things and really not find ourselves stuck in behaviors that are not serving us and not making the best for ourselves and not bringing the best out of us. And for that, self-awareness. Why self-awareness? It's about being on the path of fulfillment and empowerment. It's about finding your own superpowers, even if superpowers can be super cliche term. It's about reconnecting to what really makes you feel the best version of yourself. Though it's also something about the way you work in terms of productivity. It's not about finding this and working harder. It's about working smarter to do things that will naturally make you thrive, that will bring you energy. So you can make a lot of work done by at the same time being super efficient and productive and also being what I call self-sustainable. Consider yourself as we consider the planet in terms of ecology, of sustainability. It's about considering yourself as a resource that you have to take care of and maintain on the long term. So again, it's your own responsibility to know how your energy gets regenerated, gets drained, what people, situation, tasks, everything have an impact on you. So how do you do that? We're going to go slightly more in the detail, step by step. So first, the how. It's about knowing yourself, and I will explain to you right after what it looks like to know yourself and to ask yourself the questions so you can really understand that. It's about also, as I said, know when and why your energy fluctuates. How many of you have felt so exhausted after a day of work that you kind of don't really want to engage in the activities that you know feel good for you? We're all more or less guilty of that. Or you wake up in the morning and you didn't have a good sleep because whatever worries in your mind and somebody's draining your energy and you feel like, I don't want to go to work out or whatever, even if you really like it. And we can be our worst enemies. And the thought process is just a reflection of the way we manage our energy and the way we kind of let the environment and things have an impact on us. Because the bottom line of all my work is this principle: time is finite, energy renews. So if you run against time, if you're always busy, you will be stressed out, and even if you do good things for yourself, you will not see the bigger picture. If you shift your perspective and you start seeing things from a way of how can I be really aware of all of this and create a life that energizes myself, everything changes. So when you manage your energy, you manage your life. More generally, when it comes to work, when you manage your energy, as a consequence, you manage your time. As a consequence, you're productive. As a consequence, you're empowered. And not the other way around. You can be empowered, you can be super good at time management, but you can be completely exhausted at the end of the day. And so you will never be this best version of yourself, for other things than work. So now let's go more into the details. So for those who've been here for a while, I've been giving a talk few months ago and in different places about really in detail, manage your energy, not your time. Today I will not go in that level of detail. I will just give you some hints of information, because the whole point about all the tools I will give you about self-empowerment will be then brought to a bigger level of collective empowerment and working with people and companies and clients. So the one thing to be aware of in the first place when it comes to self-awareness, it's your natural rhythm. So basically we are living organisms, and like any living organisms, we follow natural rhythm that you can find in nature. Every human being, animal, plant, and even some bacteria follow a rhythm that is called circadian rhythm. That is the 24-hour cycle that is generated by some light receptors that we have, and that they sustain and they balance the hormones productions in your body. So the more you know about your natural rhythm, even if we all have this 24-hour cycle and there's an ideal cycle about day and night, depending on the climate, depending on the season, depending on all of that, then you will have an adjusted circadian rhythm. And it's about, depending on the place you are, finding a way to tune in, to just check in and observe how your body, what your body needs. Do you need to wake up a little bit later because you're in a new place? Do you need to go to bed earlier? Do you need to take breaks in the afternoon because the weather is tropical and it's very heavy and maybe you need a nap? When you're in a colder country, you don't need it. But it's all about having this 24-hour cycle, but then observing it and finding adjustments so you can really be the most tuned in to your natural rhythm. And when you fight against it, just be aware that there will be like the best example is the sleep depth. Like when we're tired, but we don't go to sleep because we're on social media, because we're with people, because whatever book we're reading, activities in the evening, and we're shifting the time we go to bed. But as a consequence, it will shift the hormones, the sleep hormones generation, and as a consequence, when you wake up in the morning, your body might not have finished generating these hormones, and you wake up really tired because you really fought against your natural rhythm, and as a consequence, your whole day will be impacted by this, and you might feel sleepy all day. So it's all about finding your own rhythm and really ask yourself questions and track it, write it down. What time would you go to bed? What time does your body ask you to go to bed? What time your body wakes up naturally? What time does your body ask you to take breaks? Are you more a morning, an afternoon, or an evening person? Or does that change depending on the place where you are and the people you have around you? For example, I don't have the same rhythm when I'm in Ubud than when I'm in Barcelona, because in Barcelona everybody basically have dinner at 9 p.m. That's the earliest thing you can have, which some people love, like Becca, she loves it. But me, I'm like, no, I don't want to go home. So Barcelona is just on the long term a place that is not right for me, even if I love it for many reasons. But I have to be aware of it and own it, so I can decide to be in a place for a certain period of time, but know that on the long term, just the culture, the dynamic over there doesn't fit me, and that it creates some impact on my health and my focus. So it's all about depending on where you are, and since we're all more or less nomadic here, you will resonate with that, learning to be flexible with these rhythms. Again, depending on the place, the people, and just simply how you feel. This flexibility, it's about also adjusting the moment you regenerate. So it can be taking a nap, having quiet time for yourself, or workout. So find what makes you regenerate your energy and make it happen at moments that might not make sense in a classic 9-to-5 pattern, because we've all been so hardwired for that. But you might be somebody that's just simply not a morning person. So maybe stop forcing work in the morning and own it and do your things. Sleep longer, do all of your personal activities, and then work in the afternoon and the evening. Or maybe you're the absolute opposite and you want to work at 6 in the morning and finish working by noon. There's no right or wrong answer, as long as you can really bring flexibility and take care about regenerating your energy in the process. Then this self-awareness in terms of your energy management and the way to thrive is also related to the right work environment. That can change too, but some people like busy spaces. Some people like and can handle being interrupted. We had the discussion with Sophia. So sorry to interrupt you, Sophia. It's not about me. I know she asked me if she could paint, by the way. Sophia loves super busy places with people talking around her, and I like it when I know that I don't have work to do. I like to come in the busy place of Ubud when I need to be when I'm happy to be interrupted or just distracted. I know that if I want to be focused here, I go in this room, or now I go upstairs. And I like that it's a whisper zone and you're just not allowed to talk to people. And we all have this. So it's not about feeling bad that you cannot work with headphones. Maybe you just need silence, bottom line, and there's nothing wrong with it. But ask yourself the questions. Also, maybe you're not meant to always work in the same place, always stay at your desk all day long. Maybe depending on the work you do, the moment of the day, you might want to go work in a cafe or work from home or come here or change co-working space and have memberships in different places. It's your responsibility again to experiment, to not convince yourself that you're that person. You might be completely different for 2 months and then go back in this 9 to 5 because it works for you, and just be dynamic in the way you manage all of that. Though, we live in Ubud, right? So, at least I used to. People flow here a lot. Flow is where procrastination can hide. So it's also your responsibility to be aware of when and how you're more keen to procrastinate and adjust accordingly by creating routines and rituals related to kickstarting your personal day, but also your work day, and also closing it. Some things that will put you in the zone. Find what kind of routines kickstart your work day, and also make you sure that you will not only do what you want to because you just feel like it, but sometimes there are things that you really have to do, and it's your responsibility to know how you're more keen to not do it and really do it often first thing when your day starts, whatever that time is, and then have some very clear cycles of breaks and work and all of that. It's about you to experiment and to I like to say frame yourself, so you can then move freely in the frame. But this frame, these little habits of setting goals every morning, of checking your emails but not answering them, because then you get in some time vortex and all of a sudden you've answered email for an hour and a half and your motivation time is gone, and then you will procrastinate on this specific task you were supposed to do. So really have some self-discipline about knowing what your time vortex and procrastination are, and finding ways to gently find structure for yourself. And that I know Pavliv is very good at that. But I've been talking to you about how to work all this time. Truth is, you might have all the tools about productivity, empowerment, the routines, the self-awareness of your rhythm, blah, 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 blah. It's very important. And if you don't question how your energy is impacted, you're losing the whole point. Understanding the energy impact of everything you do, every people, every places, every situation, and understand the bigger picture of what it says about what is right for you, what is wrong for you. And it's your responsibility again to make happen as much as possible what is right for you, so you can deal with what is wrong. So you have 4 kinds of energies: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. I like to talk about how public speaking impact my energy, to give an example. So I love public speaking. That's something that comes naturally to me. So in terms of mental, emotional, and let's say spiritual, in terms of my bigger picture, it ticks all the boxes. But I can tell you that after this talk, I will be physically tired. That's for sure. Doesn't mean that it's not empowering me, that it's not draining, but I'm just aware of it. So I organize my day accordingly. So I do things before, then I give the talk, and I will have, if necessary, 2 or 3 hours doing nothing, because it's just what is right for me, and I organize my day accordingly. So let's say the total of the energy impact of public speaking for me is very positive. Doesn't mean that there's no energetic impact. And doing that for everything you do is very interesting, because you will see that things, especially for example your skill sets, and I will go to that right after I just see the images. That's a topic I really like to talk about. But first let's talk about what comes naturally. This picture expresses what comes naturally. So you have a giraffe. I took this picture in Tanzania. Zebras and a springbok. You know why they hang out together? Because one is seeing very well, one is hearing very well, one has an amazing smell. So there's always one of them who's going to spot the danger, give a signal, and if a lion, whatever predator is coming around, they go away in different direction. So they kind of keep themselves safe together by being complementary. You don't ask the giraffe to be a springbok. And they all have strengths and weaknesses. So kind of nature explains us very clearly what is right, what is wrong. And we all have that kind of things in us. Some things we're just very naturally good at. And it can take a little time to uncover it. But we all have it. And on the other side of the spectrum, like animals in zoo, or this horse with rollerblades might be very good at rollerblading. At some point, that animal is going to hurt himself badly. It's not sustainable on the long term. And might be very good. And I like to take this image in terms of our skill sets. We did some studies and we learned to define ourselves through a certain amount of skill set, hard skills. And it can be super scary to develop completely different skill sets. And we kind of trap us in a decision we took when we were like 18 years old to do specific studies. And maybe back then we liked it. Our choice was making sense, but maybe on the long term and the whole life, it doesn't work anymore. And maybe we became that, or maybe we're just bored, which is not another thing. So I will go to, I see my next picture, yeah. So it's all about understanding that you might be super good at something, but at some point it's going to be so out of alignment with who you are that you're going to burn out, because you will. I did that. I was very good at everything I was doing. I've been so successful in corporate. I ended up burning out because I was living somebody else's life. I was living a life that people projected on me out of my capacities, out of the way I was learning very quickly. So my boss were always pushing me to learn new stuff, and I was providing because I had been taught to give satisfaction to the leading figure, whatever, parents or teachers or bosses, to seek for acknowledgement, because I was never questioning what do I really want. And when I was doing it, my environment was convincing me that was just daydreaming and that I could not do it. And then I was sucking it up and dealing with it. But it was just me being lazy. I mean, bottom line, it was just me being lazy and freaked out. And there's nothing wrong with this. So this is when we arrive here. Procrastination can tell you a lot about yourself. Procrastination can be an amazing tool. It can be where you kind of unconsciously let things settle, and you will at some point find your next big move. Maybe you procrastinate of something because deep inside you know that it's not right for you, even if everybody tells you, like if you want to do marketing and you have to do Facebook ads, and that's the thing, and everybody tells you, and you go to workshop and you read stuff and you watch videos, and I have to, and you don't do it, and then you feel awful. But truth is, maybe it was just the right way for you to communicate. And so procrastinating on that can be very good, but also we can procrastinate on things that are completely draining our energy. So we tend to not do it and postpone it again and again and again. And another way, that's things that we are just scared about failing, trying something new that we know deep inside is right for us. So procrastination is always a very good teacher, and only time and insights can tell you what kind of procrastination it is. There's this book called The Originals that I like to recommend that talks about procrastination in the creative procrastination process for entrepreneurs, but also explore other ways. But bottom line, it's all about managing your energy. Procrastination will always tell you that there's something utterly triggering for you in whatever you're procrastinating on. And I told you all of this. So knowing your natural rhythm, knowing your good environment, knowing in terms of skills, what is right for you, wrong for you, knowing in terms of procrastination. Because the ultimate goal is for you to use this to set the right boundaries for yourself. And setting boundaries is not like making a huge fence when nobody comes in. It's about structuring your life and and your environment in a way that you can protect yourself, so you can show up for yourself first. And also, if what is non-negotiable for you, what is like absolutely necessary for you to be balanced, empowered, and happy is fulfilled, the internal deal is that now I can make compromises on other stuffs because I have my non-negotiable, and I have to open myself to compromises that I know will not come to challenge my core. So it's a double responsibility. Showing up for yourself, and this is why I want to talk about the next part. Showing up for yourself is a way to show up for others, to be altruistic in a good way. Showing up for yourself, it's about empowering yourself enough so you can then move freely in a group. So that's an image that I really like. They could not help her if they were not going there first. So they kind of went first, but then once they arrived there, they helped other people. And on the other end, it's also being able to move in a group. So not being only an individual in a group, but being aware of your strengths and having the right people leading and being at the back. And everybody is in a place for a reason. There's this pack of wolf kind of picture, you know, where you have the older in first and the stronger in the back. And that's just against nature, and the animal kingdom teach us so much about what it is to be self-aware and be able to use this self-awareness for the bigger picture of a group of people. And that's a topic I'm really passionate about, because our society, at least corporate, but you can see it in startups too, is sick with this. People don't know how to be a team, don't know how to be a group, because they've been taught two things: to be individualistic and to be afraid of mistakes or whatever. So the whole point of what I'm going to tell you after that is that how individual self-awareness, if you're in a team and as a team manager, a company owner, or simply a team member, you can impulse some shifts in the way the team operates together to create an environment that, by making individuals thrive, you make the group thrive together. It's all about finding added value and being happy about bringing your added value collectively. So that only you can say. Of course you can ask feedback to people, but only you can know how your energy is impacted and what works and doesn't work for you, and set the boundaries so you can bring your biggest added value and taking care of your own personal happiness. And that's the ultimate goal for any kind of team or company. It's how to create engagement and to sparkle innovation. That's the biggest stake in our modern society that is constantly changing, and where you have to be reactive and you have to be intuitive and tuned in and just adaptable. How can you be that if you don't feel safe? So about how thrive collectively with self-awareness. Your individual self-awareness will give you a sense of what makes you feel safe. And it's all about learning as a manager, but also a team member, to express it and to find yourself in a space. And it has to be sparkled by the team leaders and the company owners, whatever. It's about creating a space where there's real trust, when you feel safe enough to speak your voice, when you feel seen, respected for who you are, and when there's a sense of solidarity. I would take an example that is, I really struggle with this lately. It's this new trend in startups to talk about unlimited vacations. That's bullshit, excuse me. Unlimited vacations. Unlimited. Like, you take your holidays whenever you want, on paper. But then you're responsible to have your work done. Truth is, there's never such a thing as the right time to take vacation. It doesn't exist. because there's always something going on. There might always happen something. And if you're isolated as an individual, if you cannot count on the team to cover your work, just in case something comes up when you're on a holiday, do you want to allow yourself to take these vacations? And I see so many people from startups that are struggling with this because they have this sense of belonging. So this without this can become toxic. You can do passion burnt out. You can really be managed by guilt. Because what makes people thrive is when first they know themselves enough to know where they stand in terms of values and vision, then they are in a company where they share it with people. And this is gold. It makes you feel so good. You feel that you belong, that it's just right to be here. And also you feel like you're acknowledged, that people, again, they see you added value, and they hired you for that, and they allow you to bring your own unique value to the team. So that's really powerful. But if people don't feel safe, if people feel that mistakes will be blamed, that somebody will never cover their ass in a meeting, whatever, or if they're gone, and then they will be shamed or guilted for whatever reason because there's a toxic management that make people just being defensive. People will not be defensive if there's not an existing frame that makes that happen. And it's our individual responsibility, because when you get, as well as collective, and when you get self-aware, often you open up to the fact that everybody's different, like the giraffe and everything. So you're kind of much more open to talk like truly about, okay, how do you function? How can we find a common ground to work together? And what are your natural boundaries? If nobody generates this discussion, it's very likely to not happen. And on the other side of the spectrum, if you get this and this fulfilled, then you will have people committed. Because the whole other debate in terms of commitment, engagement, it's that you cannot if you trust people, that you allow them working remotely or adjusting their working hours or everything, they will show up, they will embrace their responsibility if this exists and if this exists. This might not work on the long term with this if one of this is failing or the two of them. So this is the how. And now I'm going to go more into the what in specific examples about how. And it works also with your clients. You can create this with your clients because you have to be first, you have to know what is your vision, your culture, your values, and communicate on them so you attract people that resonate with it. So when you're building a team, a company, or when you're working with a client, if you have first a common ground based on this, it will be such a powerful way to interact with people. It's not only about this, but that will make the whole difference in terms of the why you're doing things. It's all about finding the why. Then it's about different kinds of personalities, about stopping to force the horse to wear some rollerblades. It's just letting the giraffe be a giraffe. And it's about also understanding that, I like this picture, like we will be very different depending on our culture. Make a Japanese person work with an Indian person or a Scandinavian person or an American person. That will need a lot of self-awareness and ability to adjust to the culture, to adjust that Japanese people will not speak their voice naturally. Doesn't mean that they don't have any added value, but about being open-minded enough to create dialogue in the first place with everybody you work with. Because most of the arguments you can have in life is about, it's 95% communications problems. And that's the hardest thing. So in my last company, before I left corporate, they started to do a shift to human-centered, lateral organization, dynamic organization, where people would have a better space to be themselves. And the game changer has been when the whole company, 60%, did a test called MBTI. So it's Myers-Briggs, a personality test. And it's 16 types of personality. Maybe you've heard about it. If you have never heard about it, just check it out. 16 personalities. It's a good website to take the test. It changed everything, because it's like introverted people understood that extroverted people were not behaving the way they were behaving just to annoy them. That introverted people need a certain times of silence and an invitation to enter a conversation. Extroverted people will freak out with silence and will fill them, never letting introverted people the time to speak. And I saw some stuff saying, oh my God, this is why we struggle so much. And everything changed in personal reactions. Or when an introverted person was being very extroverted, then the introverted could say, hey, you're just like, you're sucking my oxygen here, just give me a break, just shut up. Like, not like that, but ish. And let me express my voice, because they could feel that the person in front of them could now understand it. They had a common ground of understanding. And same way, messy people, I'm one of them. I mean, it's an organized mess. I have piles of papers, and within a few seconds I can find you the paper, but nobody else can find it. And so that could make me annoying to work with, because if I wasn't there, they could not access the right document. And then to compensate that, I had organized everything super well with directories on the server, but then it was so extremely organized that they were losing themselves in the whole organization. So it's all about finding ways to work together, understanding that some people would think that emotion has to be repressed, but that's another big topic. When some people cannot take any decision without emotions. And I think that's the biggest struggle in terms of human interaction. It's about sensitive people versus people who can, who don't need them in terms of decision making. It's not that some people are more sensitive than others, but everybody is a human being with emotions and sensitivities. Some people are just very good at not taking this into account into whatever decisions, and can be amazing negotiators. When the super sensitive ones will always find a common ground or satisfy or whatever, and you can learn negotiation to a certain extent. That's a good example that I like to take. So then, when it comes to working together, that's a big one in any kind of relationships in your life. Find the people where you have natural, mutual reciprocity. You're not counting points. It's a natural give and take. It's just, it flows. So that's the ideal scenario. But often the people who don't play the game of reciprocity, it's because they often feel unsafe. So again, the solution, the foundation of all of that, it's always having trust and safety as a foundation in a team, in a company, or in a relationship with a client. And saying, you can talk to me and we can find something together. I have your back and you don't feel alone in this. Yes?
What do you personally do to make people safe when you're talking to them?
You mean somebody I'm starting to work with?
Yeah.
I explain the way I function. And I ask them to explain me. And when they don't have enough self-awareness about this, I ask them to tell me what are the situations, so to take practical example, that they really don't like to see happening when they work. And it's all about finding ways in this discussion to create some rules of functioning. But that I'm coming right after this one, I will talk about setting rules of functioning together. Because again, if you just communicate and say, oh, like when you live with people, oh, we will figure it out in the process. No, you need to know like how the fridge works, if we wash dishes. I mean, just that kind of basic things that everybody's different. So if you decide to flow, organized people will struggle to have with the lack of rules. And so it's all about always communication and understanding that I'm super open to who you are and how you work. And I really want this to make this relationship as beneficial as possible and really be in this space of saying this collaboration can be a win-win. I completely believe in it. And tell me, what do you need to feel good, to feel fulfilled, to feel happy? Tell me, and I will tell you what I need. And even with a contractor, and then I write everything down in the contract. A contract for me is not only like super legal stuff. There's always another add-on that I put, and that was so useful, to have all the informal discussions, all the rules of behaving, all that we expect from each other. Like, I'm going to pay you that amount of money, and I want 50% of your workload, and I will pay the money for that, so tell me your price. Creating space for say, I value you who you are, I value time, I value you. And I want the best version of you, and I want the most empowered and happy version of you, because my project needs it. And so what are your conditions, and here are my conditions, and let's find a way to make this work. And at first, some people will love it first thing, and others that's been used to have like very dominative relationships will be really resistant. But then in the process, they realize that the more you define in advance, the more then the collaboration will be absolutely flowing. It's just all about, when it comes to contractors, what is the price you're ready to pay for a quality relationship, and to have somebody that is having time and energy and focus on you. At some point, if it's not a business associate, if it's a contract, you have to pay for that. You have to pay for availability and trust at first, and then you can build relationship and you can find other ways to collaborate together. But I really believe in the power of contracting the relationship as much as the job, the work that has to be done. Because if you fuck up, it's in the contract. It's your responsibility. It's mutual. I mean, say, if I fuck up, there are consequences. It's not only about penalties and stuff. There are some bigger things coming. So yeah, it brings me there to boundaries. I like to take the example of remote work. I meet many people who are afraid to own their nomadic lifestyle, and they don't tell their clients they are in a completely different time zone. And to the point, like, I don't even want to mention it. Or then they make big compromises, like making calls at 3 a.m. It's not sustainable for them. I mean, it's normal when you change lifestyle to, in the beginning, make that kind of compromises, but ask yourself the questions: what kind of clients do I want to attract? What is my earlier and latest hour I'm okay to work, so that I know that between these hours I'm able to bring my best value. Because if you forced work over and over again during nighttime, you will not provide good work, and your relationship will suffer on the long term. So it's all about acknowledging that these clients that you took with you by beginning this lifestyle bring wealth, bring money, and it has to be adjusted and valued. But at the same time, use this experience to say, oh, after 11 p.m. and that's the latest, maybe for me after 9 p.m. I can't function. Every once in a while I can make an exception, but I will not bring value to my client. So nobody is a winner. And also share rules of communication, saying, hey, reality is I'm in another time zone, so I will have kind of virtual office hours. When it's afternoon for me, it's morning for you, and we can make this work. And during this hours, you can reach me directly, and for the rest of the time, send me an email, and I commit that I will answer to you within that amount of hour, that when you wake up the next morning, you will have my answer. And anticipate all of that, and again, in your contract, write it down with new clients. And it will really make the relationship work. And even with remote team, doesn't have to be a client, can be an internal client, can be your colleagues. This is how it's going to work, because it's clear. And then you have a frame, you know where you stand, everybody knows where they stand, and they make compromises that are healthy for them. Next thing is teamwork, contract work, whatever. It's important to share priorities and goals. Not everything can be urgent, not everything can have the same price tag. on it. So at some point, if something becomes urgent, maybe the quality will suffer a little bit. Or if it has to be urgent and super quality, then the price is different. You know what I mean? There's at some point, and if it's strategic, the last one, there's the time, the price, the level of quality, and the level of strategy. So in a team, you have to work on the things together, but with a client also, maybe a new client, you will decide to make it quality and urgent, but not raise your price because it's the first collaboration and you want to create a bound. But then you have to say, well, it's the first time we work together. You decide to put an effort, say it. So the next time when you say another price, I mean, it will be different. That's a whole other debate if this is good to do that or not, that I will not enter because it will take an hour. But it's set your priorities and make your decisions considering that you cannot be on every task or every job or whatever, full on everything. And also know what is the goal, define clearly the goals. And in teamwork, the more you define it together, the more you will stick to it and you will remember it. When everything spreads out and everybody's all over the place because you're stressed out, go back to your priorities and goals or change them dynamically together and agree on it. Do a new contract. And it brings us to the last 2 slides. That's something that is so important when you're managing people or when you're in a team. Again, it's co-creation. I really believe that the manager of the team has to be super aware of the time of the workload of its team. So it's a give and take. Like, if I take care of you when you're overworked and I manage to remove your work and we adjust it accordingly, then you will show up when you are underloaded, and then you can show up because you know that it's a give and take. It's a natural trust. You know that when you're in deep suffering, somebody will show up for you and help you so that you can help naturally that person when that person needs you to show up. And that changed everything with my teams back then. It was about saying, hey, there's this job coming. I think it's going to take you that amount of hours because the big director asked me to do your workload. But actually, you're the one who knows. So let's sit together. Think about how long you think this task will take you. And now let's sit together and compare our times. Because I wanted my teams to feel safe. I wanted them to know that the workload that I was evaluating for this new project will be an agreement. They will know that they will be part of this project by being fully considered in terms of the amount of work it takes. Because so many managers have never done some specific works and kind of decide all by themselves how long the work would take by never asking the person. So then the person feels frustrated, feels that it's not belonging, feels like it's just used to provide something. If you shift this, it changed everything, and that includes also contract relationship. As long as there's trust, because some people would then try to fool around with you, but that's, again, it's just a 1 hour talk. It's really hard to go into details. It's the Care Bear world that I'm talking about. And last but not least, how you manage mistakes. We are in a society where mistakes is blamed. Not in, I love US culture for that. Like, people can fail. Oh. In Europe, it's very different. If you fail, you're pointed finger at and you're shamed or made fun of. Entrepreneurs will do one thing, like go sideways, try to do something, and if they fail, people will kind of celebrate that failure but say, yeah, he failed, and so it proves us that we have to stay there. And so it's really hard in terms of the way you're programmed in companies in Europe to allow innovation and creativity when you are not fully allowed to fail or just spend time trying out something that ends up not working. And that's so important because this is where magic happens. This is when people are safe enough so they know that they can try new ways of working, they can try a new product, and can speak up in a meeting. And at the same time, something that is dealt with is how you manage emergency. What is an emergency first, and how do you manage it collectively? Managing emergency and manages acknowledging mistakes is how you can see how much a team is really strong together, how they're going to stick together. And this comes only through communication and improvement and feedback culture. When a mistake is done, let's solve it together and let's brainstorm to understand what went wrong so we can have an improvement loop. We can create the conditions that it doesn't happen again collectively. We can maybe have the back of that person who felt alone at some point, or maybe that person is just not made to do that stuff, and let's rethink this. And same in a project, at the end of it, just sit around the table and say what went right, what went wrong, why, what can we learn together, and how can we adjust to be even better collectively at the end. So all of this will never be possible if people don't have self-awareness of their strengths and weaknesses in the first place and don't feel safe enough to express them. So that's it. I kind of shared in 49 minutes. So now my talk is finished and it's open to questions if you have any. Somebody has questions? No?
That's a generic question. What was your previous life? What were you doing before?
I had many different jobs, but the last one was I was a project manager in urban planning development. So I was working on big urban development project for politicians in France, but in the Geneva area. So it was all around Geneva on the French side, and so a lot of politics and also working with urbanists, but also regulation and whatever administration and the project management thing. So it was very complete. And before that, same thing in real estate development. But at the very beginning, I was telecommunication engineer and working within the UN for telecommunication regulation. That's completely different.
Yeah, before that, she was the world.
That I don't think it's relevant.
Okay,
No.
go on.
No, it's just that I do extreme sports too, and I did a talk recently about this.
You're ENTP.
Sorry?
ENTP.
NTP?
ENTP.
ENTP. I'm an introvert. No, I'm INFJ. The 1%. Yes.
About those different personalities, how do you deal with cynics in a team? When do you feel like something's not going right in a team? Do you approach the people and you're like, hey, take this test and then maybe we can figure out how to improve the way we work with each other? Because I know people that I work with that would probably never do that. So I guess I need to sneakily try to improve the situation.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. For us, it was much more easy because it was a top-bottom decision, like everybody did it, period, because it was the company decision. So I think for cynical people, they're often cynical. Yeah, it can be in your nature, like you like to tease things, but it's often the expression of a suffering. And you get on an extreme side of the spectrum for a certain amount of time. So this cynicism is really an expression of whatever suffering. I mean, suffering is a very strong word. But to come back to these people, I would rather, they will need proof. Cynical people will love completely undo your reasoning and completely like find the thing that doesn't make sense. So you just talk about what you did. Oh, I did this test and it's great, and I read this book about it, and there's actually so many studies, and yeah, there are some people that really criticize it, but I learned so much. And you talk about your own experience, so you can sparkle interest, and maybe that cynical person would just discreetly do the test on their side. And then you go back saying, hey, remember that discussion? Maybe you should try it out. If you're curious, I can give you, but if you tell them, oh, you should take this test because you're so cynical, they are going to be even more cynical about it. So the whole strategy is often just sharing your own experience and let it happen, unless there's a top-bottom decision that makes everybody take the test and an external consultant that comes in the company to tell you about it. So other things that I can see is that when you have, it's a colleague, that person.
It's in my field, I think it's a lot of people who just but it's, I mean, they trust in proof and not anything else.
Yeah, that's these people. You can find some inspiration talks, like videos on YouTube, that kind of start to challenge their vision of the world, and some speakers that are really have a lot of credibility, a lot of credentials, because cynical will always need reference. Doesn't mean that non-cynical people won't need it, but there will be questioning even more, because they're cynical because kind of admitting that the way they see things might not be the only way to see things, and there might be something bigger and they might be wrong, is soul crushing for them. It's really, really painful. So I would say find ways to have either individual discussions and maybe share your own vulnerability so they can have space to show up, and never do it in a group frame because they will nourish their own cynicism, but just take them individually and just one win at a time, just sharing your experience, sharing how you were suffering, that maybe you were super cynical, but never point out their cynicism directly. Share about yourself and what helped you, and say, hey, I'm happy to give you info because this is actually super exciting, and I read a lot about it because this is so interesting and I had no idea this was existing, and it's actually serious business. So if you want to check it out, do it. This is the only thing you can do with them. Yeah.
What's the number one hack or trick that you do that we can actually follow tomorrow when we wake up out of bed to be more self-aware?
So I don't believe in hacks. First thing first.
Please.
So I wrote an article that I said, where I expressed the fact that why I think that productivity hack is fucked, because I really believe in it. I believe that you cannot hack life, but still there are some things. I really believe that journaling is very important to get to know yourself, as cliche as it can sound, and very ubu, journaling is very important. And the other productivity hack is about setting yourself goals every morning and identify the actions. It's this book called Eat That Frog from Brian Tracy. That you will find one action, very high leverage action, that you're the most keen to procrastinate on, and that you will do first thing in the morning. So you will eat that frog. So your day will, first you will have a sense of real high satisfaction, and then your day is going to be better and better and better because this is done and you don't even think about it anymore. And it's often the things that have high leverage. So know first your actions, what has the highest leverage, this 20-80% rule, that 20% of what you do will create 80% of the results. And that by focusing on that and taking these actions, you get the dynamic and the drive to deal with the 80 and or generating enough incomes to be able to outsource at least part of the 80%. And find really the actions that bring you best added value and have the highest leverage, and do them. So that's in terms of hack. That's the only one I can find, even if it's a hack-ish. It will take time, and you will lose the habit, and you will bring it back, and it takes time. So yeah, that's it. Any other questions?
Can I share an idea I have?
Yes.
So what was your first question? Not now, but like in the middle.
How when you're talking to people, how you can make them feel safe?
Oh, okay. So I was thinking, like inside that one thing that I think is really important is to first define your values, like a part of the self-awareness. Because then when you know what your values are, then you can like take like so many different ways of making somebody feel safe. So for example, if one of your values is honesty, then by being honest, you're going to make the other people feel safe around you and working with you. If your value is not honesty but is money, you know, you can say, okay, every time you bring, I don't know, some kind of bribe to this person, so it feels, you know, like it depends so much on like what's your own value, and then you like find so many different ways, different ideas of expressing one same thing, you know. You can express like appreciation, you can express the boundaries, you can express the safety, you know.
Yes.
What are your values?
My main two values are excellence and experience. So experience that in a way that, oh, I don't know how many years of experience, but in a way that I want to offer people a cool experience while they're working with me. And it's really interesting because like 2 weeks ago or something, I had like a very bad and tense working situation, but I was like trying to figure how can I keep bringing this like good experience thing, and I realized that if my value is going to be experience, that has to be applied to myself also. And the person who I was not applying the good experience thing was to myself, you know? So it's like, yeah, you define your value and you like figure out like 10,000 ways of like expressing that. And that's going to define like every action that you do, every word that you say, like everything that you do. So I think it's like the core thing
Yeah.
of the self-awareness. Yes.
Yeah.
That was my idea.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.